Hello and welcome to a time special presentation for Thirukkural with the Times, where we explore real world lessons from the classic Tamil text Thirukkural with motivational speaker, author and diversity champion Bharathi Baskar as she explores the masterpiece. The Thirukkural has no mention of Valluvar's wife, but later texts and oral traditions speak of a certain Vasuki as the poet saint's spouse, who is lauded as an epitome of obedience and devotion to her husband. But what was Vasuki like in real life? And what did she think of it all?
Vasuki, remembered as the wife of Thiruvalluvar, occupies a curious space in Tamil cultural memory. She is celebrated, quoted, and held up as an ideal of devotion. Yet the ground beneath her story is thin. That is perhaps what makes her story both compelling and uneasy. There is no authentic proof about Valluvar's family or his wife. Then where did Vasuki emerge from? Medieval and post-medieval commentaries, regional biographies and oral traditions, many later Tamil commentaries of Kural, devotional biographies and folk narratives introduce personal details about Thiruvalluvar, including a wife named Vasuki. The Thirukkural itself, so precise and restrained, says nothing about Valluvar's personal life. He does not speak of a wife, a household, or family ties. Into this silence, later generations appear to have placed Vasuki not merely as a companion, but as a perfect embodiment of obedience and virtue. According to later accounts, Vasuki was also known as Nagi, the daughter of Margaseyan, a farmer near Kaviripakam, and his wife Ambujam. It is said that Margaseyan offered his daughter in marriage to Valluvar after the poet cured his deceased crops. Even this meeting carries a hint of the miraculous. Asked to cook a handful of sand, Vasuki is said to have turned it into rice. From the very beginning, her worth is framed through patience, obedience, and quite wonder. Stories about Vasuki multiply, but they move in one direction. She is gentle, devoted, self-effacing. Legends say that Valluvar and Vasuki had no children, though this is never stated directly. At the same time, one cannot help but notice that Valluvar writes movingly about the joy of children, even saying that the flute and the lute are not as sweet as the babble of one's own child. Whether personal or observed, such lines suggest an intimacy with family life that leaves room for quite inferences. One well-known story tells of Valluvar asking Vasuki to place a toothpick and a bowl of water beside his plate each day. He never used either. Vasuki continued the practice without question. Only on her deathbed, it is said, did he explain that the toothpick and the water were meant to save a fallen grain of rice should it slip while she served. She had never given him the chance to use them. Relieved, Vasuki is said to have passed away peacefully. Perhaps these stories grow from Valluvar's own idea of an ideal life. The chapter titled Vaalkai Thunai Nalam, the goodness of a life partner, describes a perfect wife, one who worships her husband, devoted, one who sticks to the societal norms. His description is brief and dignified. In Kural 58, he writes, Petraar, Perinperuvar Pendir, Perinchirappup, Puthelir, Vaazhum, Ulagu. Women of noble virtue bring great honor to those who cherish them. They create a world where divine grace resides. Later retellings stretch this idea, turning virtue into silence and devotion into erasure. Another familiar episode sharpens this imbalance. When Valluvar calls out to Vasuki while she is drawing water from the well, she rushes to him, leaving the pot hanging mid-air. The vessel remains suspended until she returns. The image is lyrical, almost divine, but beneath it lies an assumption made sacred, that a wife's instant response is not just expected but exalted. It is important to note that none of these demands are recorded as Valluvar's own instructions. Over time, society seems to have placed its expectations upon his moral authority, turning ethical ideals into domestic rules. The stories rarely pause to ask an important question. What did Vasuki want? Did she ever speak of her own hopes? Was her silence chosen or assigned? The traditions do not tell us, perhaps because they were never meant to. Perhaps Vasuki deserves to be remembered not as a flawless symbol, but as a mirror, reflecting how devotion is praised, how silence is sanctified, and how easily dignity can slip into erasure when stories are told without asking who is allowed to speak.